In this video, we're going to be going over the second part of a nutrition information label, and this is going to be the ingredients box. Now, the ingredients box can be found either directly underneath or directly next to a nutrition fact label. So once we find the nutrition fact label, we can easily find the ingredients list. Okay, one thing we need to keep in mind when we read an ingredient list is that the first ingredient listed is going to be the ingredient in highest abundance. And what I mean by this is it's going to be the base ingredient, the ingredient that's going to be in the product more than any other food substance. And I like to think of this as the food that the product is based around. Now, I know a lot of people out there are a little hesitant about reading ingredients because a lot of the ingredients we don't know what they are. And they're chemical names, they're names that are not household names, we're not familiar with them, and we don't know if they're good or bad. Number one, like I've discussed in the introduction, always read the first ingredient, as this is going to be the ingredient in the highest quantity, so this is going to be what we're going to be eating the most of. So if we can get an idea of what the base ingredient is, usually going to be some type of flour, it might be sugar, it might be just peanuts or almonds. So we just want to have an idea of what that ingredient is, because that's what we're going to be eating the most of. Try to determine how hard the label is to read. And what I mean by that is look at the text size, look at to see if there are any bold words, and also look to see if the text is in all capitals. Usually what I mean by this is if there are no bold words, nothing stands out. If everything is in all caps, nothing stands out. And finally, if it's very small text, nothing will stand out and it will be hard to read. This is usually done by food manufacturers who don't want us to read the ingredient list. So usually the harder something is to read, that means it might not be so good for us. So always keep in mind that when something's very, very hard to read, it might be done on purpose. Let me just illustrate my point by comparing Cheerios with a Snickers bar. Okay, let's look at the Cheerios ingredients. And we can see lots of bold words. We can see that it's not in all caps, and it's very easy to read. Okay, now let's look at the Snickers nutrition ingredient list. Okay, this is a little bit different. Everything was in all caps, nothing was bold, and it was in very small text, and not to mention, the label was actually tucked in the crease of the wrapper. I don't think that if the food manufacturer wanted us to read it, they would have hid it in that place. Okay, the fourth thing, I just want to, as this tip, bring to your attention some very harmful things to keep in mind when we're reading the nutrition label. Some of the specifics. Monosodium glutamate is very, very harmful. Stay away from that if we come across it on a nutrition ingredient list. Also, we want to stay away from sodium nitrates and phosphates. These are added to a lot of prepackaged meat products as they are very carcinogenic. And we also want to stay away from colors and dyes like blue number 4 or red number 4. These types of artificial colors are very hazardous to the health. So we want to stay away from them. And finally, the fifth tip is going to be look out for any hidden sugars. Now, just because the word sugar isn't listed on an ingredient list doesn't mean that the product isn't riddled with sugar. Sugar actually has dozens of different names that the food manufacturer uses, and we might not even realize it's sugar. These can be dextrose, it can be evaporated cane juice, it can be high fructose corn syrup, it can be maltodextrin, it can be maltitol, it can be molasses, it can be honey, it can be brown sugar, it can be agave nectar, it can be corn syrup, it can be sunflower syrup. Anything like this is basically just sugar. So we have to keep those in mind, and there are actually a lot more terms for sugar. I've just mentioned a few, so we have to keep in mind some hidden sugars we might be eating. Okay, I hope this was a good reference guide for reading a food ingredient list, and until next time, peace out and stay healthy.